will give our statement. So in recognition of that, I'd like to recognize the Honorable Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you, Chairman Meadows, and thank you for inviting me to this hearing on the unintended consequences of the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and also for allowing the American people an opportunity to hear how FATCA undermines their privacy through the bulk collection of their foreign financial records. I oppose FATCA for two reasons. First, it violates our privacy rights, and second, I think the compliance costs actually exceed the revenue that it brings in. Regarding privacy, the Fourth Amendment prevents the government from seizing or searching a person's house for papers, including their financial records, unless the warrant shows individualized suspicion and probable cause. This protection was included in the Bill of Rights in response to general warrants that have been issued by the British. FATCA, I think, undermines the very heart of this privacy right. It forces foreign financial institutions to hand over U.S. citizens' personal financial records without a warrant, without a probable cause, and without naming them individually. FATCA also violates the Fourth Amendment by demanding that all data on all Americans with overseas accounts. The demand is not individualized, but collected rather in bulk, without specifying a specific suspicion or a cause. The government is using the heavy hand of the IRS to tell foreign financial institutions that they must hand over the records of all U.S. citizens, and if they dare to defy the government, they will be hit with a crippling tax penalty that no business could survive. This turns the Fourth Amendment on its head. It presumes that every American with money overseas is a criminal, with no proof or even suspicion of criminal activity. You are guilty until proven innocent. These are not the principles on which our country was founded, and we should not stand for it. This is not just my concern. In January, the IRS's own taxpayer advocate raised the same concern in her annual report, saying that FATCA's operative assumption appears to be that all such taxpayers should be suspected of fraudulent activity unless proven otherwise. Think about that. Guilty until proven innocent. No one should be deceived that the data being collected by the IRS is somehow harmless or benign. In addition to having to report the name, address, taxpayer identification number of each account holder, the government requires financial firms to report the account number, the account balance, the value at the end of the reporting period, and all the inflows and outflows of the account. Basically, everyone for whom you've had a financial transaction or written a check to. Comparable information is not required to be disclosed for those who have domestic accounts. So it's a double standard. You have one standard for Americans living overseas and another standard for Americans here. The government has no business asking for or knowing this information about its citizens, and certainly not without a reason to believe that the person is doing something wrong. FATCA essentially gives the IRS all your overseas financial data without going through any court to decide if the government has a right to see your documents. FATCA seems to be also a solution in search of a problem. The taxpayer advocate finds also that a lack of comprehensive statistical data establishing the existence of widespread noncompliance or fraud by taxpayers with foreign accounts. They don't find evidence that there is excessive problems with people not paying their taxes. It's about the same rate as people domestically. So why would we be giving the government special powers, lower standard to look at our information? My biggest concern about FATCA is that it treats all 9 million Americans living abroad as guilty until proven innocent. FATCA acts as if the Bill of Rights does not apply to citizens dealing with their U.S. government, depending on where they live. After FATCA was passed, some foreign banks even began to refuse to do business with Americans, even canceling their accounts to avoid the red tape and possible draconian penalties. Individual Americans are not the only ones bearing the burden either. Estimates of initial costs of compliance reach into the tens of billions of dollars globally. Ongoing compliance just for U.S. companies costs more than $160 million a year. In addition, FATCA has led to foreign countries seeking information on citizens residing in the United States. Indeed, over 60 countries now have signed reciprocal intergovernmental agreements called IGAs. The IGAs allow bilateral exchange of financial data, meaning that the U.S. will now spy on foreigners who have accounts in our country as well, and we will aid and abet foreign countries in invading their citizens' privacy as well. Think about this. This may mean sending financial information to countries who are known as human rights abusers, such as Saudi Arabia, China, Tunisia. One can imagine the risk to a political dissident who comes to our country to escape tyranny, and then we find that we're going to be sending their information back to a tyrannical government, the tyrannical government they fled. These bilateral agreements, these IGAs, have not received any Senate certification, no vote in the House, no congressional authority at all. They are just done by the administration with no authority. Their constitutionality is currently being challenged in court, and I think you will hear from some of those involved in that challenge. My hope is that this hearing will shed some light on this abusive law and lead to a demand for action. Chairman Meadows and I have sponsored a bill to correct this injustice and repeal FATCA. Congress should pass our bill this year and put an end to this madness. Thank you very much for letting me testify.
Thank you, Senator, and you're very complimentary in terms of my involvement, but it's basically been your leadership, Senator, that not only has highlighted this, but that continues to stand as a vigilant sentinel to protect our Fourth Amendment privacy. And I just want to say thank you, and it's an honor to have you articulate this. You brought this issue to light when no one was paying attention, and yet I found that universally you're being applauded for your protection of those constitutional rights that our founding fathers so wisely enshrined.
This is a big, big deal to the 9 million Americans who live overseas. And, you know, we're getting ready to come up on tax reform. While this may be a small issue to many other Americans, it's a big deal to them. My hope is that the bill we've worked on, maybe we could try to get it into the tax reform package, because it's an issue I think that should bring right and left together, because, you know, sometimes the right is more concerned with financial affairs and the left more concerned with privacy and with civil liberties. But really, I think right and left could come together to say, you know what, we should protect everybody's Fourth Amendment rights. Thank you for allowing me to
Well, thank you. I know you've got to go to the White House, so you're hereby dismissed.